Never, ever pick up another pallet, not without knowing this. So we debunked the methyl bromide in pallets myth, and I knew what was coming next because it always comes next. Yeah, but you don't know what's spilled on those pallets. And you know what? That's actually fair. You're right. I don't know what's spilled on those pallets. Not only are we going to talk about what is actually spilled on your pallet, we are going to have a look at how deep that spill actually goes, and I think the results might actually shock you. But before we get into the science, I want to run something by you. Let's think about where your timber comes from. It gets milled, it gets stacked, it gets stored. It's sitting there for weeks, maybe months. You cannot tell me with absolute certainty that a rat has never pissed on your timber. In exactly the same way that I can't tell you with absolute certainty that a rat hasn't pissed on my pallet. The difference is you paid good money for yours, so your brain just says, well, it's safe. And my pallet was free and I picked it up from next to the dumpster, so suddenly there's a difference. Not really a safety argument. We'll get to the chemicals. Let's stick with the piss for now. And that's because somewhere between the forest and the timber arriving in your shed, just through the basic techniques of preparing the timber and a little bit of common sense, we make the timber safe. And we make the chopping board and everybody's happy. And that's the entire framework for this conversation. Not to trigger you. The question is whether something could have touched your wood. And the answer to that is almost always yes, regardless where the timber came from. The real question is, does the actual risk in context justify the concern? Right, I've got 4 samples. Hardwood, been out in the weather. And then I have the cleaned down piece of hardwood. Got the weathered piece of pine that has been cleaned. And the freshly planed piece of pine. So I'll do the soak test on those 4 things. Very scientific. So what could realistically get spilled on your pallet? Right, pallets move through warehouses and logistics chains. They carry food, industrial goods, hardware, cleaning products, spoiling the surprise, agricultural supplies. So what are the realistic spills? Motor oil, hydraulic fluid, food grade oils, cleaning products, fertilizer residue, foodstuffs, meats, broken eggs, produce, the rat and possum piss, and of course their nuggets. These are all biological things. Maybe a drip from a leaking bag of pool chemicals. That's the real world. The scenario people imagine. Pallets swimming in industrial solvents, soaked in battery acid. Now, that's not exactly how logistics work, and here's why. Modern workplaces have strict regulations. In Australia, it's the WHS Act. In the US, it's OSHA. Any significant chemical spill has to be reported, contained, and cleaned up immediately. A heavy contaminated pallet gets pulled from service. And here's the common sense check on top of all of that. If a pallet has seriously been soaked in something nasty, you would smell it. You wouldn't see it. Human noses can detect most volatile chemicals in concentrations well below what's actually harmful. If it smells wrong, it is wrong, so just trust your nose. So something I haven't done, but what you could do straight up is pressure wash your pallet. Before it goes near a machine, before you cut it up, give it a wash. And I want to talk about why that single step deals with the vast majority of what people are actually worried about. A pressure wash physically removes surface contamination, road grime, warehouse dust, residue from whatever was sitting on top of it. And for a new pallet, a quick clean will get you most of the way there. So you're starting with a low baseline risk to begin with. I'll just wash half of it and you'll see how much mank is on the thing. And now, cleaning it, you're reducing it further. But here's the other thing with the pressure wash. It also works as a bit of a diagnostic. Watch the water run off. If it's clear and it smells like wet timber, you're good. If it's discolored, if it foams weirdly, if it smells like chemical, that's information. That's the pallet telling you something, so listen to it. Now what about older pallets? Washing it is still beneficial, but there are a couple of caveats. Before you smash it with the pressure washer, go and get a lead swab test kit from the hardware store. It costs you about $5. And I'm talking pre-1980s. Very unlikely you're actually going to find one. All right, here is the clean versus the not clean. Still a little bit wet, but very different. Now for the older pallets and anything that's had years for those things to soak deep into the grain, a pressure wash is not going to do anything for that. The water is not going to pull out those petroleum compounds. That is what your planer is for. So how deep does this stuff actually go into your timber? Again, very scientific. I've got some takeaway containers. I'm going to put food dye in those to hopefully suck up the moisture and so we can visibly see where it is. Probably cut these while they're wet. From my little test, once it dries out, it's a little bit hard to see. There are some remnants of colour. Lucky it's not actual rat piss. It's a bit wide. Put on an angle, might show us something. Let's say something did penetrate the surface. How worried should we actually be? And I want to show you something because seeing it is like me speaking 1,000 words. And just for the experiment, I'm going to soak some in petroleum-based products. So a bit of motor oil and also leave that overnight. So the water-based spill test has the food dye. Now that is just to simulate a generic spill that's probably gone unnoticed on the warehouse floor. Now, you could probably leave these pieces of timber in that fluid overnight and they would probably suck up a lot more. But you'll see a bit later that maybe that doesn't matter. Right, so let's cut into it. Wood is actually a good barrier on the flat face. The cell structures resist liquid penetration. The lignin in the wood is naturally hydrophobic and it repels water-based liquids. Now, end grain, completely different. End grain is open tubes and liquid wicks straight up into that. So a pallet that has been sitting, soaking in the nasty stuff, you're probably going to want to cut those ends off. But let's actually have a look how far that actually goes, realistically. So look at that, on the face grain, 1 to 2 millimeters, that's it. Here's a practical takeaway. A single thickness of pass removes about 1 millimeter, let's say. 3 passes on the face grain, you are past the penetration depth of virtually any realistic spill. That's 60 seconds of work, maybe. And some of these experiments are fresh timber. Most pallet wood has been out in the world for months or years. Weathered timber actually absorbs less than fresh cut timber. The wet and dry cycles actually close down the surface cells even more. Your old battered pallet is more resistant to penetration than a fresh cut board from the hardware store. All right, the toxicity comparison. Now I want to do something that might make you a little bit uncomfortable. Stuff you use every weekend without a second thought. Let's quickly talk about what is in our sheds. Tide Bond 3, isocyanates cross-linker. It's in the glue. Western red cedar, glycatic acid, very potent cause of occupational asthma. Smells incredible, kills your lungs slowly. MDF, formaldehyde. It's a group 1 carcinogen. Carcinogen? It's a group 1 carcinogen. Unequivocal evidence that it harms humans. Yet we cut it, we sand it. 2-pack polyurethane, isocyanates, leading cause of work-related asthma. Oil-based poly, toluene and xylene. Neurotoxins, reproductive hazards. Off-gassing in your shed for days after the lid goes back on. Epoxy resin, epichlorohydrin. It's in the hardness. It's a carcinogen. Sand that stuff without a respirator. You can sensitize your airways permanently. And it's irreversible for life. The river table bros are doing it in their shorts and t-shirts. Spray paint, aerosol lacquers, acetone, mineral spirits, paint stripper, and then there's just dust. Normal woodworking, sanding dust from all the timbers. And think about dust if you're not using extractors, vacuums, even just a mark. And of course, old paint on old timber, lead, all of these things, they are in our sheds right now. And here's the thing though, nobody is really losing any sleep over it because we risk manage these things appropriately. We wear respirators, or we should when it calls for it. We use dust extraction, we increase our ventilation, use a big fan, use common sense. We understand the risk in context and we deal with it appropriately. So once we apply those exact same principles to pallet wood, proper preparation, dust extraction, ventilation and a bit of common sense, we're not just managing the risk, we're removing any reasonable doubt about what might actually be hiding in that timber. And based on this video and my little experiments, if there's anything at all. Now, motor oil is probably the most common realistic pallet contamination. And as trace residue on your timber that you're planning with dust extraction, the exposure is genuinely negligible. Hydraulic fluid, similar story. Dried cleaning products, mostly inert salts. Now let's have a look at what's on your shelf. Fine dust bypasses your body's normal defenses and goes straight into your lungs. People do this routinely without drama, without a second thought, because the products are familiar. They come in nice packaging from the hardware store and the risk is invisible. Now compare that to trace residue motor oil on your pallet. That's been potentially sitting outside for a few months at a time. Then you pressure wash it, then you send it through the planer a few times with your extractor running and your dust mask on. One of these gets raised eyebrows about its safety, and the other one gets used in shorts and t-shirts, and maybe with the garage door shut. And then there's lead paint on reclaimed timber. This one I want to be straight about. It is a genuine concern. Lead was used in the paint until the late 1970s, early 1980s. Lead has no safe exposure level. It accumulates in your body over time. Lead paint on a pallet is pretty unlikely, and the concern isn't touching it, it is disturbing it. The moment you sand, cut, or burn lead paint-based timber, you're generating lead dust and fumes, and that is a neurotoxin that you are now breathing in and ingesting. Cognitive effects, organ damage, handling painted timber and then touching your face, or eating before you've washed your hands. So if you are using lead-based timbers, chemically removing the paint is the way to go. Don't go using the angle grinder or chucking the thing on the fire. But same with a lot of the other things. Put your gloves on, wash your hands, and then when you are using that timber, make sure you're using the appropriate respirator. Okay, let's quickly talk about pool chlorine, acids, and the time factor. A couple of specific ones because they come up a lot, and let's deal with them properly. Pool chlorine. It's a strong oxidizer, corrosive in liquid form, yes, but the active ingredient, hypochlorite, is chemically unstable and it breaks down with UV, heat, and organic material. A bleach spill on a pallet that's sat outside for a few months has fully degraded. What's left is essentially salt. It's inert. And bleaches. A significant bleach spill leaves the wood visibly lighter, whitish and chalky. You'll see it before you even process it. Hydrochloric acid. It is an aggressive chemical, but acids on wood don't hide. Fresh hydrochloric acid visibly chars and degrades the timber. It has an unmistakably sharp smell. Any pallet that looks significantly acid hit will show obvious signs of damage. Dark staining, surface breakdown. You will not mistake it for clean timber. A fresh acid spill on a pallet has an immediate chemical burn risk. Skin, eyes and airways, especially if the concentrate is high enough to be off-gassing. Battery acids, industrial cleaners and chlorine are legitimate pallet spill concerns. And none of those things are something you want on your hands or in your lungs. Aged acid is a different story altogether. Over time, it neutralizes, dilutes and dries out, significantly reducing the acute risk. That said, residue can reactivate with moisture. So a pallet that looks clean and dry can then cause some irritation when you pick it up with just your sweaty hands. Again, bang on some gloves. So just be very suspicious of any obvious staining, any sharp smells when you pick the thing up. And if something's not right, put it back down. But if you really do want that one particular pallet because it's a really nice color, use the common sense protocol because you may be discarding that pallet just for that one tiny spill that's just on a couple of boards. So here's the broader principle, and this is really important. For organic solvents, acetone, mineral spirits, paint thinners, these evaporate. They have vapor pressure. Given air and time, surface residue of most common solvents are largely gone within days or weeks. The one thing that time does not fix is heavy metals. Lead, chromium, arsenic, they don't evaporate. They don't degrade. They don't go anywhere. That's why you should test old painted timber and why old CCA treated timber never gets burnt. The general rule, for organic chemical spills, time is your friend. For heavy metal, time is irrelevant. For acids, the wood tells you for itself. This one's a quick bonus experiment. So a weathered pallet, and it's got a heap of random spills again, which is just the food dye, just so we can see some of that coloration. And there is a big crack in this particular board. Now, I probably should have let the dye dry before I sent it through the planer. However, what it did do was spread the dye around, so we can actually see it in the fibers. So here we go, second pass, what are we up to? And it's starting to clean that away. There's 3 passes, some remnants on the edge in a bit of that grain there, and then 4 passes, and we're basically looking at a clean piece of timber. Now the crack there obviously has the moisture in it, so that could be where the hidden bits and pieces are hiding, so maybe we want to clean that out or even cut that out. But again, once we see the results from end grain, maybe that's not a huge factor either. But I will do one more cross cut just to show you that there really isn't any soakage around that crack itself. So again, it's all looking pretty good. the common sense protocol. Step 1, visual inspection. Avoid anything with obvious staining, chemical residue, or discoloration that you can't account for. If it looks wrong, it's probably wrong. Pick up another one. Step 2, any smells, fresh chemical smell, trust your nose. Set it aside. Step 3, if it's painted or old, make sure you do a lead swab. Step 4, and for me, I'm going to bring this in, is pressure wash all of your pallets. That has other benefits, not just nasties. What are we up to? Step 5, you're going to run all of these boards through the thickness several times until you get down to the nice clean layers. Cut off any end grain. You're probably cutting inside all the nail holes anyway, so it's well and truly hasn't soaked that far in. And obviously step 6, work with dust extraction and ventilation, which you should be doing anyway because of all the things we've just talked about. So that's it. That's the whole protocol. And if you follow these steps, you're working more safely than most people who sand MDF in their garage unprotected. Now, let me add in one little other step for a little bit of time safety. Once you've done the pressure cleaning, put that pallet aside and have a rotation system so it gets to sit there now for months in your backyard, knowing that it's been cleaned, being exposed to UV, time, drying out. Then you're not using those pallets that you've just brought home, increasing the risk management, decreasing the exposure. Just doing this bonus experiment, I've got 2 bits of wood with the end grain down, and I'm watching this end grain slowly make its way up the timber. Let's see what this one looks like on the inside. So this little bonus experiment was just one of my little prelim experiments. Now I left these 2 pieces of timber in the fluid for a couple of days as well, sitting next to that motor oil experiment. Unlike the motor oil, which really soaked through almost the entire piece of pallet wood, this water base just made its way up around the outside. And then once you cut it, it was mostly, as you can see here, again, clean on the inside, so you could use the timber. Okay, let's say you were unlucky enough to come across a pallet that had some arsenic spilt on it. You got it on your fingers and you licked them clean. You're looking at nausea, vomiting, cramping, a metallic-y taste in your mouth for about an hour. That single incident's probably not going to floor you, but arsenic is a cumulative toxin, and repeated low-level contact is where the actual damage gets done. Peripheral neuropathy, organ damage, and the risk of cancer. Get it on your hands, wash your hands thoroughly, and move on. But it's also why we don't burn, sand, and play with those CCA treated timbers. For woodworking, they are for the garden. Leave them out there where they do their job, and why they're pumped full of those chemicals. Treated timber, not fumigated timber. Think methyl bromide. They're 2 different things. So those treated CCA timbers that have been pressure treated with a mixture of chromium, copper, and arsenic, they are to preserve against rot, insects, and fungi. The chemicals are chemically fixed deep into the wood fibers so that it stays there for decades. This is very different to a simple spill on a pallet. Okay, just quickly, I've created a massive, world's greatest FAQs, frequently asked questions, document down below, and you can download that one from my website, mini website. But what you'll also see on that website is the check squares. All this talk about carcinogens. The byproduct of those is cancer. As you may or may not know, we have a good mate, Phil Shimbine, and he's fighting the battle of the bum. You'll see the novelty size check squares. We are still raising money for Phil, and sales always drop off until I mention them in a video. If you want to help us help Phil, you can buy one of those check squares, and the army of 3D printers will get to work and get those printed off and sent out to you. It is greatly appreciated and a little bit relevant for this video. Okay, just a little bit more information. Okay, so fresh rat piss is the bigger concern. It is still biologically active, and that's where the leptospirosis risk lives. Lepto is a bacterial infection, and it's spread through that contact of the rat piss through your eyes, nose, or open cuts on your hands. Dried rat piss or old rat shit is dramatically less of a concern, but they still can carry those bacteria. And again, that same logic applies to wherever you got your timber from. So gloves are an easy fix for the pallets and for the good timber when you're initially handling it. And then once you've had a chance to clean it up, you've largely taken the risk off the table. Okay, so a fresh oil spill on a pallet is more an irritant than any acute danger, but the type matters. engine oil, hydraulic oil, and industrial lubricants carry contaminants that you don't actually want getting absorbed into your skin over a continuous and long working period. And repeated mineral oil contact is a known long-term cancer risk. Aged oil is less chemically active, but may have driven deeper into the timber, meaning as we start sanding and cutting, that is going to start releasing those contaminants into the air. It also makes for a terrible gluing surface. So aged oil contamination is actually probably more of a woodworking problem than a health problem. If the pallet is that heavily soaked in oil, it's probably not worth your time, so just leave it behind. Okay, biological spills, so bloods, meats, spoiled produce are common with pallets that are moving through the supply chain. Fresh residue is an active bacterial environment. Salmonella, E. coli are all realistic passengers, and they're going to make you crook. Again, hand and mouth contact or broken skin. Aged and dried biological matter is significantly less of a concern, but it may leave behind decomposition and mold spores, etc. And they're going to come airborne if you start sanding them. For this one, the smell is probably going to be a little bit of the giveaway. So anything with visible biological staining, just cut those pieces off and turf them in the bin. The rest of the pallet is probably just fine. Maybe don't lick the pallets if they're wet. Burning, it produces toxic smoke. So all the people that like to say pallet wood, it's great for firewood, they're the ones actually doing the silly behavior. Okay, I think the results are pretty good. They're pretty fair. We had them soaking in the timber. As you can see that on the pine especially, it made its way around and soaked up a lot of the moisture. Kind of the common theme is even on the end grain that it's clearly soaked up like a sponge, and on this pine it's quite young and quite porous. So I expected it to soak up. I've just lopped off a little bit. I don't know the exact measurements. I've gone in a couple of mils. There's still some soakage going on there. But then I just whipped off a bit on the end. And we're in the clear from the end grain. And that was the same on all the tests. You didn't have to go far at all. I'm talking a couple of saw blade widths and you're pretty much away from any of that moisture or any of that staining. From the top, around the edges, we're talking 1 and a bit mil of soak. And even where it's sort of seeping in between grains there, it doesn't go in very far at all. Your plane is going to take care of that to get you down to the nice clean stuff. You're going to do anyway. If you want a nice clean gluing surface, you're getting down to that layer anyways. The plane is doing the job for you. You're away from the danger. Around the nail holes, didn't really make much of a difference to the soakage. But again, if you want to play it on the safe side, just whip off 10 or 20 mils inside the nail lines and you've effectively reduced all the risk from any end grain soaking. I don't know, I'm no scientist, but it's pretty comprehensive that most surface spills can be dealt with by cleaning up the timber and applying all the things in the protocol or the common sense woodworking bucket of things to do. That's all I have to say about that. Let me get the oily one. Basically, the worst offender was the pallet that I soaked in the motor oil for days, and it literally soaked it up like a sponge. And it really did make its way through the timber. When I've picked up pallets that clearly had oil spilt on them, generally it's not soaked through. If I've cleaned up the timber and there are obvious oil stains, I just discard them because finish looks terrible on them, because you can't get rid of that yucky oil stain looking timber. So just give those few boards the arse. Okay, this is the oil spill board. 4 passes and it's pretty clean. It's probably usable in some applications, but again, oil spills are probably more a woodworking problem than a health problem. Some of those oil spills may not reveal themselves until you plane it away anyway, but if it looks clean, it's good to use. The acid test. My advice, if you can't account for what it is, chuck it away. So yes, I've got this almost clean, but you can see some burning. Now this is hydrochloric acid. All acids are very different. If it was sulfuric acid, very different, very bad. I'm going to put that information in the FAQs as well. If you come across weird staining, maybe just use this end of the board or just don't use them. So here's some of my personal thoughts and my experience. I've been doing this for 8 years. I've mostly been picking up my pallets from the back of Bunnings. They come from all over the world. All the things you can imagine, they're generally not getting spilt on. They're pretty clean. I've never actually smelt or visibly seen anything to give me any real concerns about the pallet. So who is this video actually for? The first one is you. The person who wants to just get started, who likes the idea of turning something free into something real, and who just wants to know that they are doing it safely and sensibly. And I think that's what this whole video has been. Low barrier of entry, the right information. The second group, and I love this group, is the people who already know this. The seasoned pallet woodworker and also the non-pallet woodworkers. The ones who have been doing this for years and they've seen every comment in the comment section. You know the ones. There's the person in the comments who's clearly just discovered woodworking and is excited and looking for information about pallets, and they're asking genuine questions, and then someone rolls in with all the fear and all the misinformation and turns them off before they've even got started. And you've now got the knowledge, or already had it. You don't have to write an essay, just try and remember a few of these points and have the confidence to reply on their behalf, or just drop a link to this video. Because that one comment on that one little video might be the reason that keeps someone in the hobby, as opposed to completely turning them off or taking away that low barrier of entry, and they never do just get started. We all know what woodworking gives people: the focus, the satisfaction, that thing that you made with your hands. That's not a small thing, and for some people that genuinely changes things without the drama. Pallets are the lowest barrier of entry for all of that. They are free, you can use them for learnable skills, and you can get real results with what is considered pretty ordinary timber. So what I'm asking is we just try and do this together and we bring those people in rather than see them get pushed away. Now, I could clearly talk about chemistry and risk profiles all day, but I want to finish with something that actually matters to me. Woodworking has been the most positive thing I have ever done for myself. Not just as a hobby, but as a person. It gives me something to focus on, something to make. Sometimes it requires my full attention in the best possible way. Woodworking is mental health goodness in the bank, and you can spend that later when you need it. And then on top of that, it generates income, real, actual side hustle money. And I've made that money from things that I've made out of pallets. Money I didn't have before, money I could put into the workshop, money I could put into the family budget from free timber that I picked up off the side of the road that was otherwise going to go into the dumpster. And if you'd like to watch the video about methyl bromide, that'll be right here. And if you want to see how I started and made money woodworking with pallets, that'll be right here. But in the meantime, it's time to pack up the shed. Catch you later.